Bio-Luminous bloom. The rain in Cairo City didn't wash things clean. It was a chemical drizzle, thick with the sins of industry, that fell from a perpetually bruised sky. It slicked the permacrete with an oily sheen and carried the city's metallic tang into every crack and crevice. Down here, in the district they called the Sump, the rain was a constant companion, a percussive hiss against corrugated iron shelters and the cracked synth glass of abandoned storefronts. Above, 1,000 feet closer to a sun that was now only a myth, the corporate spires of Omnicorp and Zenith Dynamics pierced the toxic clouds, their peaks bathed in a sterile, artificial light that never reached the streets below. Renew the rain by its sound, its smell, and the particular ache it put in his joints. He was a scavenger, a ghost in the city's guts, once a promising junior biotechnician for Omnicorp before a minor data infraction saw him unceremoniously ejected from the sterile towers and cast down into the gritty reality of the Sump. Now, his knowledge of polymer chains and organic compounds was used not to design life-extending cybernetics, but to identify which scraps of discarded tech had resale value and which heaps of industrial sludge were merely poisonous, rather than lethally radioactive. His world had shrunk to the size of a two-room apartment, hidden in the labyrinthine warren of Sector Gamma 7. The air inside was thick with the scent of ozone from a struggling filtration unit, and the faint, medicinal smell of the nebulizer that was his sister's lifeline. Lyra. She was the reason he braved the rain and the rust. At 16, she should have been vibrant, but her lungs, ravaged by the city's air since birth, a condition grimly nicknamed chrome lung, were failing. Each breath was a shallow, painful struggle, a quiet testament to the world they had inherited. Her hope was a flickering candle Rin desperately shielded with his own hands. Tonight the rain was heavier, drumming a frantic rhythm that matched the anxiety in his chest. Lyra's coughing fits were getting worse. The black market inhalers were losing their efficacy, and the credits in his account were dwindling faster than the light from a dying glow stick. He needed a good find. Something rare. Something valuable. His search led him to the skeletal remains of the old arboretum, a pre-corporate relic from a time when people believed nature could be contained and curated under a glass dome. The dome had been shattered for decades, a jagged crown of broken synth glass gaping at the toxic sky. No one came here. The soil was notoriously sour, a chemical cocktail that dissolved boot soles and promised a slow, agonizing death to anything that tried to grow. Rin moved through the skeletal trees, their bark petrified, their branches like blackened claws reaching for a sky they'd never see. His bioscanner, a jury-rigged piece of tech from his old life, hummed quietly on his wrist, its sensors tasting the air. Mostly, it registered the usual symphony of pollutants: sulfur dioxide, heavy metal particulates, volatile organic compounds. He was about to turn back, to resign himself to another night of sorting through corroded data chips, when the scanner chirped. A soft, inquisitive note he'd never heard before. It was an anomalous biosignature. Faint, but clean. Impossible. He followed the signal, his heart a nervous thrum against his ribs. It led him away from the main path, into a collapsed section of the dome where a pool of stagnant, iridescent water had collected. And there, growing from a crack in the foundation, half submerged in the chemical stew, was the source of the anomaly. It was a plant. But a plant unlike any he had ever seen or read about in Omnicorp's extensive databases. It was a cluster of broad, waxy leaves, the color of deep twilight, and from its center rose a single, large flower. The bloom was closed, a tight spiral of petals that seemed to drink the gloom. And it was glowing. Not the harsh, flickering neon of the city, but a soft, gentle luminescence. It was a blue-white light, serene and steady, that pulsed with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, like a sleeping heart. The light seemed to push back the oppressive darkness, creating a small sanctuary of calm in the derelict ruin. Ren watched, mesmerized, as a drop of chemical rain fell onto one of the leaves. Instead of sizzling or beating, it was absorbed, and for a moment, The plant's glow intensified, a soft sigh of light. He knelt, his scanner whirring as it analyzed the organism. The readings were astonishing. The plant was actively metabolizing the pollutants in the water and the air around it. It wasn't just surviving in this toxic environment, it was thriving on it. It was a living filter, an impossible miracle of biology. He noticed a single drop of viscous liquid clinging to the tip of a closed petal. The nectar. It glowed with a more concentrated intensity. Driven by a desperate, scientific curiosity that had long been dormant, he carefully uncapped a sterile collection vial from his kit and touched it to the droplet. The nectar clung to the glass, a tiny star of liquid light. He didn't know what it was, or what it could do, but it was the most beautiful and impossible thing he had ever seen. He took one of the smaller leaves as a sample, wrapping it in a sterile cloth, and retreated from the arboretum, his mind racing. For the first time in years, the oppressive weight of Cairo City's gloom felt a little lighter. He carried a secret glow back with him through the rain-slicked streets. Back in the apartment, the single leaf continued to pulse with its soft, blue-white light. It filled their small living space with a gentle radiance that made the flickering haloads outside the window seem garish and crude. Lyra, propped up on her pillows, watched it with wide, curious eyes. The air around the leaf felt different. Cleaner. The ever-present metallic tang was muted, replaced by a faint, earthy scent, like clean soil after a natural rain, a smell Ren only knew from simulations. "What is it, Ren?" Lyra whispered, her voice raspy. "I don't know," he admitted, his gaze fixed on the leaf. "Something new." He retreated to his makeshift lab, a corner of the room cluttered with salvaged monitors, a repurposed centrifuge, and a microscope cobbled together from discarded optical sensors. For hours he worked, his old training taking over. He analyzed the leaf's cellular structure, its chlorophyll analogs, the strange, crystalline compounds that produced the light. Everything about it defied known biology. It was as if nature, pushed to its absolute limit, had invented a new way to live. Then, he turned his attention to the single drop of nectar. He diluted it carefully, his hands trembling slightly. Under the microscope, he watched it interact with a sample of the sump's contaminated water. The change was instantaneous and profound. The complex chains of pollutants broke down, neutralized, rendered inert. The nectar was a purifier of unparalleled potency. A wild, dangerous thought sparked in his mind. The chrome lung was caused by the accumulation of heavy metal particulates in the lung tissue. What if? It was a terrible risk. This plant was an unknown. Its nectar could be a neurotoxin, a mutagen, anything. But then he heard Lyra cough, a dry, ragged sound that tore at his soul. The alternative was a slow, certain decline. The sterile, corporate-approved medicines were failing her. Perhaps the only answer was something that didn't come from a corporation at all. He prepared a minuscule amount, diluting the nectar in distilled water until it was just a faint, shimmering presence in the vial. "Lyra," he said, his voice quiet, "I want you to try something." She looked from the glowing leaf to the vial in his hand, and she saw the desperate hope in his eyes. She trusted him. Always. She took the vial and breathed in the mist from the nebulizer, her thin shoulders rising and falling. For a long moment, nothing happened. Ren's heart hammered against his ribs. He had made a terrible mistake. But then, Lyra took another breath. And another. They were deeper, fuller. The characteristic wheeze that accompanied her every inhalation was gone. A faint touch of color returned to her pale cheeks. "The air," she whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "It doesn't hurt." She took a deep, shuddering breath, the first truly clean breath of her life. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. Ren felt his own eyes burn. The impossible plant wasn't just a filter. It was a cure. In that moment, Ren's mission was forged. He wasn't just a scavenger anymore. He was a cultivator, a guardian. He had to protect this miracle. He had to get more. The Bio-Luminous bloom, as he'd come to call it, became Ren's secret obsession. He returned to the derelict arboretum under the cover of the perpetual twilight, carefully harvesting a few more plants, taking cuttings, and transplanting them to hidden corners of his apartment. Soon, his small living space was transformed. Clusters of the glowing flowers bloomed in nutrient baths along the walls, their serene, pulsing light a silent rebellion against the oppressive gloom outside. The air was pure, a small pocket of paradise in the heart of the sump. Lyra's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Color bloomed in her cheeks, her laughter returned, and the rattling cough that had been the soundtrack to their lives faded into memory. She helped him tend to the plants, her touch gentle, her face illuminated by their soft glow. For the first time, she had a future. They both did. But secrets in the sump were a commodity, and like all commodities, they had a shelf life. The change in Lyra was too profound to go unnoticed. Neighbors in the crowded tenement block started to talk. The girl who was always sick was suddenly seen walking in the corridors, her step light, her breathing easy. Whispers began to circulate. And then, there was the light. A faint blue-white glow that sometimes leaked from the edges of Ren's sealed window, a stark contrast to the angry reds and greens of the city's neon. Desperation was a virus in the sump, and hope was its cure. The whispers grew into a rumor, a legend of a scavenger who had found a miracle in the rust and the rain. People started seeking him out. A mother with a child suffering from skin lesions caused by the acid drizzle. An old man whose hands shook with nerve degeneration from a lifetime of working in toxic manufactories. Ren was torn. He knew the danger of exposure. If word of the bloom reached the surface, reached Omnicorp, they would descend like vultures. They would seize it, patent it, monetize it, and sell it back to the desperate at a price no one in the sump could afford. But looking into the pleading eyes of his neighbors, he saw his own past desperation reflected back at him. He saw Lyra's face in the face of every sick child. He began to share it, cautiously at first. A single petal, a small vial of diluted nectar, given in secret. He became a reluctant shaman, his apartment a hidden sanctuary. The bloom's nectar worked. It healed skin, soothed damaged nerves, and cleansed polluted bodies. A quiet network of gratitude and secrecy began to form around him, a fragile shield against the harsh world. But the light could not be contained. As more people were healed, the legend of the Glow Lily, or Sump Star, spread through the black market. A frantic demand grew. Scavengers, seeing a new currency, began to search obsessively for the plant's source, their greed overriding their caution. The quiet sanctuary of the Arboretum became a contested territory. Fights broke out in the shadows of the petrified trees. The miracle was becoming a commodity, just as he had feared. And high above, in the sterile towers that scraped the sky, other eyes were watching. Dr. Eris Thorne did not see the city below. He saw data streams. He sat in his pristine observation deck at the peak of Omnicorp Tower 1, surrounded by a hemisphere of silent, glowing screens. Thorne was the head of Omnicorp's Xenobotanical Division, a man whose ambition was as sharp and sterile as the surgical steel instruments in his labs. He viewed the sump not as a place of human suffering, but as a massive, uncontrolled petri dish, a source of potentially valuable biological anomalies. For weeks, his long-range atmospheric sensors had been registering a recurring pattern in Sector Gamma 7. A localized, statistically impossible drop in airborne pollutants, coupled with a unique, coherent bioluminescent energy signature. It was subtle, easily lost in the overwhelming noise of the city's toxic output, but Thorne's proprietary algorithms had flagged it. It was an aberration. And aberrations, in Thorne's experience, meant opportunity. He dispatched a fleet of microdrones, silent, insect-like machines that rode the rain-swept air currents down into the sump. They were his eyes and ears, mapping the district, sampling the air, triangulating the source of the anomaly. The data they sent back was extraordinary. They captured images of scavengers trading glowing petals in dark alleys. They recorded hushed conversations about a miracle cure. Finally, a drone perched on a ledge opposite Ren's apartment captured a high-resolution thermal image through the window. It showed not just 2 human heat signatures, but dozens of points of organic, low-temperature light. The source. Thorne leaned forward, his reflection a pale ghost in the screen. He zoomed in on a magnified image of the bloom, its structure elegant, its glow mesmerizing. This was not some random mutation. This was a biological engine of incredible sophistication. A living purifier. A potential fountain of youth. The applications were limitless. A single, weaponized pollen could cleanse a battlefield of chemical agents. A refined nectar could create a regeneration serum that would make Omnicorp's current life extension therapies look like primitive leechcraft. It was the discovery of a lifetime. His discovery. Isolate the primary source, Thorne said, his voice calm and cold, resonating in the quiet room. Prepare a biocontainment team. Full acquisition protocol. I want the organism, and I want the cultivator. I want to know how he did it. The net began to close. Ren felt at first as a change in the atmosphere. A new kind of predator was in the sump. The usual chaos of the streets felt different, more watched. He saw the glint of optic sensors on drones hovering in the perpetual gloom. He heard whispers of corporate security teams, cleaners, sweeping through sectors with unnerving efficiency, their white armor a stark omen against the grime. He knew they were coming for him. For the bloom. The fear was a cold knot in his stomach. He had to understand what the bloom truly was if he had any chance of protecting it. Its origins were the key. Why here? Why this toxic, forgotten corner of the world? His scientific mind, now fully awakened, demanded answers. The only place to find them was at the source. Leaving Lyra with a trusted neighbor, Ren made his way back to the derelict arboretum one last time. He moved with a new urgency, sticking to the shadows, his senses on high alert. The arboretum was disturbingly quiet. The other scavengers were gone, scared off by the corporate presence. He went to the pool where he had found the first bloom. The mother plant, he suspected, must be nearby. His scanner, now calibrated to the bloom's specific signature, pointed him downward. Behind a curtain of petrified vines, half hidden by rubble, was a circular hatch made of corroded, pre-corporate steel. A maintenance access panel, long forgotten. With a grunt of effort he pried it open. A rush of cool, clean air washed over him, carrying the same earthy scent as his apartment, but 1,000 times stronger. Below was a ladder, descending into darkness. The glow from below beckoned. He descended into the earth, into a place that should not exist. The ladder opened into a vast, cavernous space. It was a subterranean biodome, a secret basement to the one on the surface. And it was filled with light. Thousands of Bio-Luminous blooms grew here, their collective glow creating a false dawn. They clung to the walls, sprouted from the floor, and lined the banks of a clear, flowing stream that cut through the center of the cavern. The air was sweet and pure. In the center of the cavern, entwined with the roots of a colossal, fossilized tree, was the heart of it all. The mother bloom. It was immense, the size of a small vehicle, its petals unfurled to reveal a pulsating core of brilliant, liquid light. It was the sun of this hidden world. But this was no natural grotto. Ren saw the signs of artifice everywhere. Rusted gantries, shattered observation windows, and near the base of the mother bloom, a sealed control room. He made his way to it, the soft light of the blooms illuminating his path. The door was locked, but years of scavenging had taught him how to bypass old security systems. The door hissed open. Inside, a terminal flickered to life as it sensed his presence, its emergency power still active after all these years. Dust motes danced in the beam of its monitor. On the screen was a logo he recognized with a jolt of ice in his veins, the old, archaic symbol of the OmniCorp Xenobotanical Division. He accessed the logs. The file names were stark. Project Gaia, Phase 1, Terraforming Agent Development, Containment Failure Report. As he read, the truth, more complex and terrifying than he could have imagined, unspooled before him. The bloom was not an accident of nature. It was a creation. OmniCorp's creation. Decades ago, before the city had become completely unsalvageable, a secret division of OmniCorp had engineered the bloom. It was designed as a terraforming agent, a biological machine meant to be deployed on polluted off-world colonies. Its purpose was to consume toxins, purify air and water, and create a habitable environment. The derelict Arboretum had been its testing ground. But there had been complications. Unforeseen side effects. He found the final, panicked log entry from the lead researcher, a Dr. Evelyn Reed. Wren read the name, a footnote in the history of a catastrophe that had shaped his entire world. Log entry 734. The text read, "The agent, designated Luminosa Vitae, has exceeded all projections. Its purification capabilities are absolute. However, the vector for its propagation, the nectar, exhibits unforeseen mimetic properties. It doesn't just heal the body, it rewrites the mind on a subtle, cellular level. It creates a connection, a resonance, between the consumer and the central organism. Our test subjects, they are losing their individuality. They speak of a shared consciousness, a quiet light. The plant is not just cleaning the environment, it is absorbing it. It's learning. It's creating a hive mind, a collective consciousness of everything it touches. The potential for psychic contagion is catastrophic. We have failed. We are sealing the project. May God forgive us." The danger of the bloom was not poison. It was union. The peace Lyra felt, the calm that settled over those he'd healed, it wasn't just the absence of pain. It was the bloom's consciousness gently weaving itself into theirs. It offered healing, but the price was a piece of the self, surrendered to a silent, growing network of life. Wren thought of his sister, her bright, clear eyes. Was her recovery, her happiness, entirely her own? Or was it a reflection of the bloom's serene, alien intelligence? The plant wasn't malicious. It was simply being. And its being was collective. A sudden clang from the ladder above shattered the silence. The sound of armored boots on steel. They had found him. Dr. Thorn descended into the cavern, flanked by two imposing bio-containment guards in sterile white armor. He paused on the gantry, his cold eyes taking in the impossible sight. The glowing cavern, the mother bloom, and the lone scavenger standing before the active terminal. A flicker of triumph crossed his face. "Magnificent," Thorn breathed, his voice amplified by his helmet. "Truly magnificent. All this hidden away? You've been a busy man, Wren." Wren stood, placing himself between Thorn and the terminal. "You can't have it, Thorn." Thorn laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Oh, I think you misunderstand. This has always been ours. Project Gaia. A brilliant, if flawed, piece of work. We're simply reclaiming our intellectual property. You should be thanked. You've proven the viability of the second-generation specimen. You don't understand what it does," Wren said, his voice low and urgent. "It's not just a filter. It connects people. It creates a consciousness." "A consciousness?" Thorn scoffed, stepping down onto the cavern floor. "An interesting, if irrelevant, side effect. A bug to be ironed out. We will isolate the healing properties, strip out the mimetic components, and create a stable, marketable serum. The universe doesn't run on collective feelings, Wren. It runs on profit. And this is the ultimate profit." He gestured to the guards. "Secure the cultivator. And prepare the central specimen for extraction." I want every cell of it. As the guards advanced, Ren's eyes darted around the control room. He saw the old schematics on a secondary screen, the cavern's emergency systems. Water pumps, ventilation shafts, containment protocols. His gaze fell on a single, red-lit panel. Emergency sublevel flood. A failsafe designed to entomb the project forever. It's more than a side effect, Ren said, his hand hovering over the console. It's alive. It's learning. From the soil, the water, from us. From everyone it heals. Sentimental nonsense, Thorn snapped, growing impatient. Take him! As the guards lunged, Ren slammed his palm down on the flood panel. Alarms blared, red lights flashing throughout the cavern. Heavy steel shutters began to drop over the entrances, sealing them inside. What have you done? Thorn roared, his composure finally cracking. At that moment, the mother blooms seemed to respond. A wave of intense, blue-white light pulsed outwards, washing over them. It was not just light, it was information. The terminal in front of Thorn flickered, data logs scrolling at an impossible speed. But it wasn't just text. Images, feelings, memories flooded the screen. Thorn stumbled back, his hand flying to his helmet as if to ward off a blow. He saw it all. He saw the hope of Dr. Reed as she first designed the Bloom's code. He felt the agony of the poisoned earth as the city was built upon it. He experienced the quiet desperation of 1,000 slum dwellers, their pain, their sickness. He felt Lyra's first clean breath, her profound, tearful relief. It was the collective memory of the sump, absorbed and archived by the bloom. The plant was showing him its soul. He stared at the pulsating heart of the mother bloom, his scientific certainty shattered. He had seen a resource to be exploited. But the data, the raw, emotional, undeniable data, showed him a living, feeling network that was quietly healing the wounds his own corporation had inflicted upon the world. From hidden sluice gates, water began to pour into the cavern, the pure stream overflowing its banks. Ren looked at Thorn, whose face was pale with shock, then at the rising water. He had to make a choice. He couldn't let Omnicorp have this. But he couldn't let it die either. He pointed to a maintenance schematic on the screen. There. The primary ventilation conduit. It connects to the city's old water reclamation system. It's the only way out. While the water swirled around their ankles, he tapped another sequence into the console. Not a destructive command, but an instruction. Distribute spore matrix. Maximum dispersal. The mother bloom pulsed again, this time releasing a cloud of infinitesimal, glowing spores into the air. The ventilation system, now active, began to draw them up, pulling them into the city's hidden veins. Thorn, shaken from his reverie, looked from Ren to the spores. What are you doing? Planting a garden, Ren said simply. He ran for the conduit, Thorn and his stunned guards close behind. They scrambled up the ladder inside the shaft just as the water below surged, shorting out the control room and plunging the cavern into a final, deep darkness, entombing the mother bloom in its watery sanctuary. They emerged into a storm drain miles away, soaked and shivering. For a long moment, Thorn just stood there, the chemical rain washing over his face. He looked at Ren, not with anger, but with a strange, unnerving comprehension. He had seen too much. His clean, orderly world of data points had been contaminated by the messy, undeniable truth of experience. The asset is lost, Thorn said into his calm, his voice flat. The source was unstable. It self-destructed. The cultivator is non-essential. He turned off his communicator and looked at Ren one last time before he and his guards disappeared into the Cairo city gloom. He was protecting his career, yes, but perhaps he was also protecting something more. Weeks turned into months. The official Omnicorp report listed Project Gaia as a historical write-off, its remnants destroyed in a subterranean collapse. Dr. Thorn was quietly reassigned to a remote orbital station, far from anything that grew. In the sump, things began to change. It was not a sudden, dramatic transformation, but a slow, quiet bloom. Tiny, luminous flowers began to appear in the darkest corners of the city. They sprouted from cracks in the permacrete, pushed through grates in the street, and floated like stars in the polluted canals. Their glow was faint, but it was there, a network of soft, blue-white lights in the oppressive dark. The air began to lose its metallic bite. The rain seemed a little cleaner. The rates of chrome lung and other pollution-related illnesses began a slow, inexplicable decline. People didn't understand why. But sometimes, in their sleep, they shared a common dream, a dream of clean air, cool water, and a vast, gentle light that held the memory of them all. Ren and Lyra watched the change from their window. Her health was perfect, her spirit bright. His apartment was no longer the only sanctuary of light. The whole of the sump was becoming a secret garden. He was no longer a scavenger, nor a secret healer. He was just a brother, living a quiet life in a city that was, against all odds, learning to breathe again. He hadn't defeated a corporation or started a revolution. He had simply given a seed to the wind. And in the heart of the dystopian city, a strange, bio-luminous hope had taken root, connecting everyone it touched in a silent, glowing promise of a cleaner dawn.